The Candid Frame is supported by donations by listeners just like you. Help us to bring you great conversations with great photographers. Support the show today with your monthly contribution through our Patreon effort at patreon.com/The Candid Frame, or click on the link in the show notes or the website at thecandidframe.com. Thank you.
This episode of The Candid Frame is brought to you by FreshBooks. Discover a super intuitive way to make creating and sending invoices for your business efficient and simple. Try it out for free for an entire month. Visit freshbooks.com/candid and enter The Candid Frame in the How Did You Hear About section. FreshBooks, it's small business accounting software made just for you. This is Iberian X, and this is The Candid Frame. Many people are inspired to pick up a camera with the birth of their first child. Besides documenting the family's life together, they are sometimes inspired to explore their own creative side. Some take it even further and find ways to make photography a career. Ashleigh Raddatz is just one such photographer. Originally from the U.S. and now living in Germany, Raddatz is a family photographer whose artistry revolves around capturing connections, the small, intimate gestures that reveal the most intimate interactions between family members. But when she turns the camera to her own family, which includes 2 sons, she's also capturing her oldest boy's struggle with autism. It's a condition that we hear a lot about, but that many of us don't completely understand. So we often assume a lot about the children and the families, much of which may not accurately reflect their reality. Raddatz's photographs share the story of one child and one family in a way that allows us to understand and appreciate that despite the challenges that autism brings to the table, the connection between parent and child is still about patience, understanding, and love. Ashleigh, welcome to The Candid Frame. It's a real pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
You know, you do some wonderful work, and we want to talk about your personal work, but let's talk about what the work that makes up your career. Why don't you describe to our audience the kind of work that you have an affinity for?
Mostly it's what I consider documentary style, family photography, and also connection photography. So basically, my approach to work is to keep everything as authentic as possible and just really capture the story of how things are unfolding right in front of us, whether it's a single subject or a family. It's just important to me to have real emotion, movement, raw authenticity.
I like the word that you use, connection. Was that something that you saw lacking in a lot of the work that you saw being done by others? How did you come to find, your niche, what you wanted to capture in your own photographs?
It's funny, when I sat down and I looked at my photos, I was trying to come up with some words to describe what they look like and also what they feel like. And what I had noticed, and it's very, very hard, as I'm sure most people know, to kind of subjectively look at your own work. And so I was trying to really come up with what I continuously saw in my body of work as a whole, no matter what I was photographing. And connection was the one thing that I saw, whether it be, like I said, from a single subject or for a family. And to me, that was so important because I feel a connection to my subjects whenever I'm photographing them. So just as a whole, that's how I work. What moves me moves them, and it really becomes a really easy ebb and flow of capturing images and telling stories.
You're living now in Germany, but you're originally from the States. Did your photographic career begin well before you moved out to Europe?
It didn't. I had dabbled a bit in photography when I was younger, high school days. I took, of course, your yearbook course, and my mom went and purchased me an analog Nikon, and I took a summer course, and I really liked it, but it was always back and forth, never consistent. And then once I moved here, it really kind of started as a way for me to keep myself busy, because when I first moved to Germany, I did not know the language. I was still learning everything, and I really wanted to take in everything I was seeing. And so that's when I said, okay, I'm going to, start documenting my life here. And that's how it initially started. And then it kind of moved on from there.
Well, that must have been a challenge, though. I mean, being completely out of your element in terms of culture, in terms of language, and you're going out there, trying to be a photographer and a photographer families, where there's a certain level of intimacy and usually a shared awareness of culture, of history that can sometimes help you.
Absolutely.
What was that like for you, being sort of an outsider?
When I very first moved here, it was quite difficult. I also come from California, and people are very open there, very friendly. You can make friends anywhere, I always felt, in the States. And when I first came here, people are a little bit more reserved and not so open. And so as I began to make friends and also began making photos of my friends as we just be together, hanging out and, just exploring the city or at a family barbecue, whatever it was, they could really see then also the connection through my photographs. And through that, they let me in more. And so now my challenges is I have recently started my business, and my challenge is opening that up to other people in this country. Some of them are very open. Some of them are a little bit skeptical of, okay, she's going to come to our home and just, I basically tell them I approach this as your friend. So I build a relationship with them first. And that's really important here. They're a bit more reserved is the best way to say it.
I've traveled to Paris, and that awareness of privacy, at least for the Parisians, it seems to be a big concern.
Yes, absolutely.
Because I was talking to a friend who had lived there for a long time, and it was like, I mentioned to him that was the first time I'd ever been into, in a Parisian apartment in all the times that I'd gone there. And he says, well, that's not particularly rare. I mean, the Parisians are more than likely to want to meet with you like at a cafe or something like that, rather than have you in an apartment because of that sense of privacy. Is that something that's sort of what you contend with in Germany?
Yes, for sure. They are definitely more private and reserved until you build a friendship. But one thing that I have learned over the 6 years of being here is that through any kind of relationship that you build with the culture here, or clients or friends, they become very loyal, and then they will trust to say, okay, let me go ahead and introduce you to my friend, and you can invite her into your home as well because she's okay. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that also is definitely the same way here.
What led you to segue from, taking portraits of, your friends and other family members and to want to try and make a business of it?
Honestly, there was a few things. Initially, it was that at first I always said, no, I don't want a business. No, I think I'll lose the passion for it. No, I think a lot of photographers go back and forth with that, is when you're shooting and it's not for business, you're shooting for yourself. And that's when you make your best art. And for me, I didn't want to lose that. I thought if I'm shooting for my other people, I'm going to be shooting what they want rather than what I want. And then as more and more people kept approaching me about my work and saying, no, but you should stay with what you're shooting. There is hardly any of that here in Germany. There's really not. And people will come to you specifically for this. And I thought, okay, you know what? You're right. And so that's one kind of promise I've made to myself and my clients, is that I'm shooting to capture always, like I said, that connection, the authenticity, and what moves me as an artist. And in turn, my clients are going to get great art. And they'll feel a connection to that work because it's true, it's them, it's authentic, and it's their story. It's, their life.
Did your interest in photography sort of coincide with the birth of your first son? Or had you been doing it? Had you been pretty active in doing it even before that?
No, like I said, I had dabbled a little bit in it, but not as much as I should have, or if I would have known how much I loved it, I wish I would have started earlier, of course. But, and like I said, when I very first moved here, I thought, okay, I'd like to really remember every moment here. Initially, I thought I'd only be here a couple of years, and now it looks like I'm staying for a long, long time. But yeah, once my first son was born, I actually kind of got even more into it, because initially I used to journal a lot. That was my outlet for creativity and thoughts and arts, and I really loved writing. And so I thought, when I was pregnant with my son, I thought, I'm going to write him letters all the time. That's going to be my way to just really document his life. And then when he was born, he had this way about him, and I still have a really hard time putting it into words exactly. I can't explain it exactly, but it's almost like he had seen the world and knew more than I did. He just had this old soul. And I really wanted to hold on to that and explore that more and express that. But I could not, for the first time, find the words to do it. And so then I started picking up my camera every day. I said, there's something about, of course, it's my kid. Everyone says that about their own kid. But really, I just felt there was something so different about him, and I couldn't put my finger on it. And yeah, I just thought, okay, through my photographs, I can tell his story just like I would if I were to write it when I'm not finding the words.
When did you start suspecting that there was the possibility that he might be suffering from autism or some other sort of developmental problem?
I had I think moms have the instinct, really. I had said to my husband a few times, I think something more is there. I think something's going on. And he had said, no, I think you're worrying. He's just, at first he wasn't speaking. So it was, it's because he's growing up bilingual. And then he'd fixate on things with, or stack things in a row, or as an infant, he would often cry and cry and cry. And then I'd finally figure out, his sock is a little bit crooked, and I'd fix it and everything would be perfect. Everything just had to be so in order. And I had this instinct for it, but it wasn't until he, at his 3-year checkup, that the doctor then said, I think you should probably go get evaluated. And that she had thought that he possibly was on the autism spectrum.
What knowledge or what understanding did you have about being in a child being in the autism spectrum had before your child was diagnosed?
I didn't know that much about it. I did know some things, but from the things that I did know, I only knew of very severe autism. And my son is considered moderate to high functioning. And so that was what was much different for me, was that, there were certain things that he could do, and the things he can do, he does very, very, very well. So there was so much that made up, or there is so much that makes up an autism diagnosis. It's so hard to say, okay, this kid has it, but my kid does a few of the same things. So maybe I just couldn't compare. I really didn't have the knowledge. But like I said, I had a feeling in me that something wasn't quite right.
That must have made it incredibly sort of difficult to be a parent, to be a caretaker, but at the same time, you're feeling these sort of mixed feelings of, at one point wanting to be in denial about it, because in certain ways your son was acting like a normal kid. And then there's other ways where he's, showing symptomatic of possibility of being autistic. So it must have been a whirlwind of emotions for you during that time.
It was. I think that many parents that have children with special needs go through that, because, in your mind, your child's perfect no matter what, right? So here he is, and there's these little things and these flags going off, and you keep pushing him back, saying, no. He'll grow out of it. It's a phase. And then you realize, no, wait, this isn't a phase. This is our new normal. It's just you have to accept it. It's just how it is. So yeah, it did take quite the adjustment to, come to terms with that.
Did you have to deal with, strong feelings of guilt or anger?
Oh, absolutely. Mostly, I would say guilt. For me, there was a few things behind the guilt. The first reason for feeling guilty was that I had heard often especially in the States, of kids being on the autism spectrum, or you read about it on the internet or on web forums. Oh, my kid has autism. And I had just thought, oh my gosh, this thing is, what is this autism? It's so overdiagnosed, and there's no way so many, children have this or people have this. And so part of me then felt so guilty forever. It's not that I doubted anyone, but I just thought maybe the doctors maybe it's wrong. Maybe there's something else going on here. So I felt guilt for that, because then I thought, okay, now I'm getting taught my lesson. And then, of course, there's the guilt of, the unknowns for your child and what's going to be best for them. And then you think, do I even have the right to feel or grieve for this? I mean, he's healthy, and for the most part, in every other way, this isn't a death sentence. It's very, very interesting dynamic and range of feelings that you go through. I think, it's really, you have to come to terms with basically knowing that your child is going to grow up much different than you had envisioned when they were in your stomach, when they were in your belly, when they first came into the world. It's just, coming to terms with that.
How did your photography of him change as a result of this, increasing awareness that his development and his growth was going to be markedly different than what you had anticipated?
Once the doctor had said to us at that 3-year checkup, I think you should go get an evaluation. And we were facing that autism diagnosis. Photographing him took on this whole new meaning to me. It really became a lifeline of sort. For a minute there, when we first got that diagnosis, I kind of felt like I had lost myself. I lost my footing. I thought, oh no, what's happening here? But once we had that facing us, right in front of us, photographing him became basically my coping mechanism, and really was my way of slowing down and seeing how he sees the world, how from his perspective, from really just his mannerisms, his rhythms, his routines. At first I thought, why is he doing these things? Why is he doing but the more I observed him and allowed myself to photograph him in a different way than before, it really opened my eyes to it and helped me as a mother especially come to terms with this is him, and he is just amazing the way he is.
It's interesting you said you gave yourself permission to photograph him in that way. Was that something that you struggled with, to photograph him at times where you perceived him as vulnerable?
Absolutely. At first I just, if he was having any kind of breakdown, overstimulation, I would always put the camera down. I think that's often with parents when they're photographing their kids. It's usually the happy moments, or, oh, he's playing with a new toy. And I just made this commitment to myself that I was going to photograph him exactly the way he is. His truth, his honest, this is his story. And, there's some struggles in there, and there's some really, really good times in there too. But I thought, in order for me to accept this, I need to be honest with myself. And for me, as a photographer now, when I look through photos, I can really reflect on that and say, okay, this was what was really happening here.
Did you have to sort of contend with how people might see you when you were doing this? Not that people were witnessing you making these photographs, but people thinking, oh, you're a poor parent. You should be, consoling your child rather than making a photograph of them. Was that part of the issue for you?
Yeah, at first it was, for sure. I think in the beginning when we found out, okay, this could be an autism diagnosis, and we really weren't sure how to deal with, okay, then what do? If he's having a meltdown, or if he's, in some sort of fit or anything, do you just leave him be? Do you go down and talk to him? What do you do? And for me, even photographing him, I know there comes a point sometimes when I know, okay, I put my camera down, and it's not like I photograph every event or ongoing with him overstimulation or something like that. But there are certain times that I know, okay, he seems like he's going to start self-injury, or he needs my help to calm down. But we've really learned that with him, sometimes he just needs to work through it himself. Mm-hmm. And so long as he is not injuring himself or other people, we allow him to do that. And actually what's interesting is even now that he's getting older, he's 5 now, and he's really understanding things a little bit better. And he likes to look through too. And we kind of talk about, okay, what was happening here? When this was going on, what was happening? And he'll look through and, he kind of laughs a little bit, or he thinks, I think that for both of us, it has taken on a completely different meaning.
How does he respond to the presence of the camera?
Now, he's so used to a camera being there, he doesn't really. That's the other thing is it's very rare that he's making any kind of eye contact with the camera or with people in general, but it's very rare he's looking directly into my camera. And that's why, for me, this goes back to the connection thing, is I felt like I wanted that connection with him, and I wasn't getting it from him looking in my eyes. We had the connection of mom and son and cuddling and things like that, but being able to photograph him connected to me to him more and just gave me that understanding. And I think for him, he doesn't, when he's in the middle of, stimming or having an issue or playing or whatever it is, he really is in his own little August world. He's not really paying attention to my camera at all.
As much as I enjoy earning money from something that I love to do, I'm not a great fan of the business side of things. Besides the constant work involved in securing work, the writing of invoices, billing, and managing finances can sometimes leave my brain feeling a bit numb. So I'm always open to resources that help take some of the pain out of the process. FreshBooks is just that kind of solution for managing your finances and keeping an accurate record of what's coming in and what's going out. For example, its mobile app allows you to take pictures of your receipts so that you can use FreshBooks later to organize them. No more rummaging through your drawers during tax season. Find out today how easy and efficient you can be handling your business finances using FreshBooks. FreshBooks is offering a 30-day, unrestricted, free trial to my listeners. To claim it, just go to freshbooks.com/candid and enter the candid frame in the How Did You Hear About Us section. FreshBooks, it's small business accounting software made just for you. How is the culture in Germany and the way that they contend with issues of autism and developmental disorders compare? I mean, obviously you weren't raising your son in the States, so you didn't have that direct experience, but what were some of the things you felt like the culture itself, how did it make it different or difficult or a challenge to sort of contend with the diagnosis and being able to raise your son and treat him?
Here I don't know how true this is, but this is just a feeling as a family touched by autism, I should say. There's not much dialogue about it with the general public. Doctors here, therapists here, his preschool, everyone involved in him are amazing. But in terms of general public, my son, he looks like an average 5-year-old. To most people. And so when something is happening that people don't understand, there was often comments of, oh, well, maybe he's spoiled, and I know there's a little bit of that in the States as well, but I think that there's much more dialogue about autism than there is in Germany. It's slowly starting to change, and more people are seeing, okay, if he doesn't have a physical disability, that doesn't mean that everything is perfect So I think that's slowly changing. That was also a bit of my hope with releasing our story, was to add a bit to that dialogue here, to get that conversation going, and knowing that for parents to talk to their kids and even to me about, things could be different. It's not, you can't always judge a book by its cover.
Because you had only been living in Germany for a relatively short period of time, and then you're having to contend with this, this major challenge. Did you feel very isolated?
Absolutely. That is, yes. I think there was a few things that were isolating. One was there was a language barrier. I speak German. I've learned German since moving here. I did not speak it before coming, but I've learned it since. But it's still a bit different because my German's not perfect and I can't always express exactly how I'm feeling in German. So that's the first part of it. And the second part is that my husband's here. He's a great support system. My in-laws are here. They're amazing. But, I just still felt, isolated. I can't even, I think no matter where you are, when you are facing that diagnosis, you feel isolated. It's just, not typical that every family is going through. And so you feel like most don't understand.
When you were making the bulk of the photographs, had you not intended to share them with the world, or were they largely going to be a very sort of a private exercise?
Yes. My intention from the beginning was just to understand it more and to cope and try and pull myself out of the fog I was in after being faced with that diagnosis. It just really I had that instinct that something was going on, but hearing it out loud was just a whole different realm than I was ready for. And so then I knew I had to find a way to get through this and still be the best mother I could be to him. And I think that with my photography, it just really reaffirmed that he will always be who he is and I will always be who I am. And yeah, it's just his rituals and his rhythms are a big part of who he is. And it just, has just given me a whole nother view on his life.
Once you started accumulating a body of work, what was your husband's thoughts about the images that you produced?
Initially when I had first started the project, well, I call it a project, I hadn't really even told him. I was just trying to, he's very practical and very, he just was kind of holding us afloat. He had to do all the translating, this and that. So I didn't want to bother him with those things. And I know he would have been very supportive from the beginning. I just kind of wanted to keep it to myself. And then once, after, a few months of making the photographs, I had showed him and he said, wow, that's our boy. He was just so, I think it was quite healing for him to see as well, because it's just exactly who August is. There's, no fluff added to the photographs. It's just him being himself. And for him to see it, he was also, I think, quite, healed, I guess a good way to say it, that, it brings acceptance to be able to see photographs give you just this other insight into looking into a story. And that's kind of what it did. It removed us far enough and also enabled us to see how far he's come in just, a few short years of receiving services and therapies.
When you started considering, sharing this work, what were some of the questions you asked yourself about whether or not to do it?
Actually, I went back and forth for a long time if I should share it. And I finally kind of got pushed more to share it once there was an incident at a local park here, and some boys were kind of taunting my son. And the parents sat back and did nothing. And my son was sitting in the grass rocking. And I thought, you know what, that's enough. I can't sit in silence anymore about this. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to go ahead and put our story out there. I had actually been in contact with a group of photographers that also document families touched by autism, and they're very inspiring. And upon seeing how healing it has been for those families and everyone else, I thought, you know what, Germany really needs this too.
And were these other photographers people that you had met online who were documenting their own children or their own lives or other people's children in different parts of the world? Yes.
Well, some of them are documenting their own children. There's actually, it's an organization, it's a nonprofit. It's called Spectrum Inspired. And the women that run it are just amazing. And there's photographers now all over the world, and I'm one of them. We donate photography to families touched by autism. So there's a group of us, and there's what we call the Spectrum Inspired Tribe. And, that's where we all kind of chat and can talk about the struggles and triumphs and anything else that comes our way. It's just an amazing group. And so just really seeing how much good such an organization can do for the world, I thought, okay, I want to be a part of them. And I've been, for I want to say maybe 6 months now, and it's just an amazing group of women. I think there's some men in there too, but mostly women.
But that must have been really gratifying to be in a group where you didn't have to explain yourself or explain your child.
Yes, it is. Every day it's full of empathy, and that's just such a rare thing, I think, to find anymore. We're so quick to judgment and everything else. And I think being amongst people with a similar mindset and a similar vision of just bringing happiness and stories, and knowing that children with autism deserve to have their story told as well is really important.
I really like your imagery, because in some of the photographs, your child is in the frame, but you're focusing on some other element. I mean, there's one shot where you shoot it overhead, and he seems to be playing with a Lego, and there's like a little Lego man on the ground.
Yeah.
And I look at the shots that you do of that, and it's like, the focus is your child, but you reveal details about him that, in a way that I think are both beautiful in terms of just what the overall composition, but just the fact that you are really investigating his life in your photographs. And I'm wondering, how conscious of that are you when you're photographing, and how did that sort of develop over time?
Well, first of all, thank you. It's a great compliment. Yeah, I think for me, always with my photography, I've been very into details. I really like small details, but I actually have to remind myself often to move back, take in the whole scene here. There's a lot going on. But I think specifically in terms of August, there's so many little parts to him, and especially with the Lego shot you're speaking of. At the moment, this is his obsession is Legos, or these little Lego guys, I should say. And he won't go to sleep without them. That's his thing. And so for me, it was just really important. And everything has to be, I wanted to show as part of the story of the image, is for August, everything has to be just so with his little Lego men. And so he was putting them back together exactly how he wanted them. I think his little brother had just recently kind of took him apart while August was getting something else. And when he came back, he was quite upset. And so he sat down and reassembled them. And so for me, it was just really a matter of wanting to capture exactly how meticulous he is with his new obsession, his Legos.
His hands play a big role in a lot of the shots, whether he's sort of clutching himself when I guess he's stressed, or even just playing with something. Tell us about the focus of his hands and how that reveals different aspects of his life. With
many children with autism, or many people with autism, I should say, there's more than just children. They do a lot of often rhythmic movements, and oftentimes that has to deal with their hands. It's happening with their hands. And so for August, he does often where he will flap his hands, or often bring him to his face, bite his fingers. There's just everything. That's his go-to for comfort, is wringing his hands, moving his hands, flapping his hands. So that's through my photography. I guess it is kind of intentionally, but not necessarily intentionally. The focus is oftentimes his hands, because that's his coping, a big way for him to cope. And that's for many people with autism. They flap their hands or wring their fingers, or
the fact that you photograph, you're paying attention to such small details in photographing your own son. How has that influenced when you're photographing other people's children?
It has influenced it a lot, because I realize for me, what I really love about this project and what has taught me about my own photography is that no matter if a kid is on the autism spectrum or not, these little phases they go through, these moments in their life, this moment right now, we might forget it in, a year or 5 years or whatever it is. And those little details are often what are so special. And just, looking back on that, I've loved it. That's one of the things that I've just loved about my project with August. And so I try and incorporate similar things with families I photograph with their children, because I think they would appreciate the same thing as, do you remember when little Johnny would, carry around this stuffed puppy dog all the time? Or, I love those little details. I think they're really important to a kid's childhood and parents' memories.
Do you feel like it's made you more adept at dealing with children? Because children are not necessarily, regardless whether they suffer from autism or not, you point a camera in their direction and all bets are off sometimes. But I'm wondering whether your experiences with your sons, because you have two sons, only one of whom is suffering from autism. But
correct.
How has that sort of helped you in terms of becoming more adept in terms of photographing families and children specifically?
I think I've always done pretty well with children, but especially since having my own, I've learned a lot about patience. And that's also with my documentary approach to photography. One of the main things or the reasons I like this type of photography is because the kids can just be themselves. So even when I first go to a home or to a park or wherever it is that we're going to be photographing, I just hang out for a little bit because I want them to warm up to me and think of me there as just a friend visiting with their mom and dad or, whoever it is. And then when I pull out my camera, they might think, oh, that's cool, or, oh, she has a camera. And they might be silly for a few minutes, but then they kind of go back to being who they are. And I just love that. I think those are the kind of things that I think parents will cherish forever, is just seeing their kids be who they were on that day.
When you finally decided to release these images of the world, can you talk us through in terms of how you decided to do that?
I really wanted a chance for August for our story to get out there, because I really felt that it would resonate with other parents that have children that are touched by autism. And I also thought that it would bring dialogue to the autism spectrum. I think that a lot of times people if they see something happening, of a kid's acting different or, not normal from what they're used to seeing, oftentimes they think they're just misbehaving. And for me, it's just really important to get out that dialogue out there and that dialogue going, that no, it's not just as simple as it may seem. And like I said, more than anything else, I also wanted parents that also have children on the autism spectrum to realize that they're not alone in this, and that there's ways to, I just wanted to show my way that I was able to come to terms and accept my son's autism diagnosis and know that I don't want to change anything about him. Sure, I want him to learn through his therapies, how to grow and cope with certain situations, but I don't want to change the core of him. I don't want to change his spirit. And that's really important to me. And I think that a lot of parents feel that same way. And so I thought by releasing the photographs, that would resonate with them to see, okay, he can do, the typical 5-year-old play of, playing with his brother or running on the beach or whatever it is. But then there's also those hard moments and those in-between moments that people don't always see.
What have been some of the more surprising or unexpected responses that you've had as a result of, the press that you've gotten on this work and people seeing the images and hearing your story?
Honestly, I was not expecting so many parents from all over the world to reach out to me. It's been really humbling, and just, I feel so gracious, and now I feel like I made the right choice. I was not positive I did, but I now I know I did, because I've had so many people contact me and just share their stories with me, or just tell me, I see my son in your photos, or, my grandson was just diagnosed and we're trying to learn to cope and your photos gave me hope, and all of those. And I love that. I love that people have reached out, instead of staying behind the easy thing to do is sit behind your computer and never say anything, say, okay, that was a good story. But these people have contacted me, made it a point to contact me, took time out of their life to let me know that my work has helped them in some way. And I think that's with any kind of art or photography, you want to hear that. And I'm especially humbled because my photography has helped me myself, and to know that it has helped someone else just makes my heart full. Mm-hmm. It's amazing.
One of the things I have to ask you is that any parent that has multiple children, they usually have the story of photographing endlessly their first child. And then as they have the second or third, there are just less and less pictures of the other kids. And I'm wondering, considering that you are a professional photographer, how conscious are you of the fact that, you have another child here and trying to be, sort of dutiful, not only in terms of the amount of attention you provide to each one, but as a photographer?
Of course. It's funny you say that. I'm the third of 3 children, so I have the least amount of photos. So I've really made a conscious effort to make sure I have plenty of photos of my second as well. I have plenty of photos of my boys together. My second, his name's Finnegan, and he is a little spitfire. He's like just a little hurricane. He reminds me a lot of myself. And so I love photographing him just as much. And I have plenty of photos of him. Yeah, and of my boys together. And I think it's really important. I mean, we are a family. We have this little family. There's the 4 of us. And I'm rarely on the other side of the camera, but I have, endless amounts of photos of all of us, or all of them and my feet. How about that?
Well, my last question that I ask each guest is I ask them to recommend another photographer for our listeners to discover and explore on their own. And it can be anyone, someone you've long admired or someone you've recently discovered. So who would that one photographer be and why?
Oh, gosh, that's a very difficult question. I would say it would be Colleen Hodges, because she's the one that kind of started up Spectrum Inspired. And when I first learned about Spectrum Inspired and contacted her, I had told her, you know what, I have been photographing my son, and I have always thought if other parents could see their children on the spectrum the way I'm seeing my child now, it could just do so much for them. And so I just was so appreciative of her to take the time to start up Spectrum Inspired, along with a couple of other women in there. And she's just such an amazing photographer, such an amazing person, just so sweet. And yeah, that would be who I would suggest. She's just a really good person, really great photographer.
Well, Ashleigh, thank you for your time and for sharing your story with us. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again to Ashleigh Raddatz for joining us here at TCF. You can check out her work by visiting studiolamuse.com. And if you want to find out more about the organization Spectrum Inspired, please visit spectruminspired.org. And remember that you can and do play a big role in introducing others to the work that we do here at The Candid Frame. Take the time today to write a review in the iTunes Store. Thanks to Jose Franco Rodriguez in Sweden and Meat Pants in the U.S. for their 5-star reviews. You can also support the show by making a regular monthly contribution through Patreon. You can contribute amounts of $2, $5, $10 or more, or anything in between on a monthly basis, and help make a big difference to the work we're doing here at TCF. We've made some changes to the gifts that we provide our supporters. At the $5 a month level and higher, you will receive free copies of exclusive TCF ebooks written by me, the first of which was released last week. Find out all that we have to offer and support the show by visiting patreon.com/The Candid Frame, or you'll find a link in the show notes and the Candid Frame website. To access our complete archive of interviews, download the free Candid Frame app, available for Apple iOS, Android, and Windows. Links for each can be found in the show notes and the website at thecandidframe.com. The Candid Frame's audio engineer is Martin Taylor, who you can find at theothermartintaylor.com. Our senior producer is Cynthia Parker, and our music is from Kevin MacLeod, whose royalty-free music can be found at incompetech.com. And this is Ibarian X, and this is The Candid Frame.